Prohibition in the United States was the government's attempt to outlaw the production, shipment, and sale of alcohol and intoxicating alcoholic beverages across the country. During the 19th century, various groups pushed for national prohibition. For instance, southern and rural populations believed the liquor ban would reduce the crime they associated with the growing number of immigrants living in American cities. In addition, clashes arose between conflicting religious factions that were separated into the wets and the dries. The dries disapproved of drinking and considered saloons and other popular spots of alcohol consumption politically corrupt. Conversely, the wets wanted the states to remain uninvolved in discussions of morality. Support for prohibition grew, and organizations like the Anti-Saloon League lobbied for the case. Many African Americans, women's groups, and progressives were also in favor. The 18th Amendment of the Constitution was a change that established the liquor ban, and it was proposed by the U.S. Senate in 1917. 2 years later, it was ratified and then enabled when Congress passed the Volstead Act, and it identified the effect of liquors and the consequences for violating the laws. Prohibition went into effect on January 16, 1920. The task of enforcing the Volstead Act was given to the federal agency known as the Prohibition Unit, which was later called the Bureau of Prohibition. This agency faced many difficulties, mainly because the urban population strongly opposed prohibition and found as many ways as possible to get around it. For example, the Volstead Act had not expressly forbid the consumption of alcohol. However, it allowed people to drink alcohol they had stashed prior to the start of prohibition. Some Americans even sought out liquor prescriptions from their physicians, since the use of alcohol for medical purposes was exempted. Other citizens headed to border countries to get a quick drink. Meanwhile, the illegal production and sale of liquor by organized crime developed rapidly. Bootlegging emerged during the Roaring '20s and saw alcohol smuggled into the United States by criminals. The black market for alcohol soon fell under the control of gangsters like Al Capone and Bugs Moran. In fact, Capone made millions from racketeering and by operating thousands of speakeasies. These establishments illegally sold liquor to patrons and helped popularize jazz music. Some individuals redistilled alcohols to make them drinkable, and this forced the government to begin poisoning those industrial alcohols to make them undrinkable. Between all the homemade solutions, tens of thousands were poisoned or killed during Prohibition after drinking unsuitable alcohol. As the decade progressed, support for Prohibition dwindled. While the ban did succeed in reducing alcohol consumption, it also caused a huge spike in violent criminal activity. This was made especially evident by the St. Valentine's Day Massacre of 1929, when several members of Moran's mob were murdered allegedly by Capone's gang. The American people also felt Prohibition was encroaching on their freedoms. Prohibition hit an all-time low during the Great Depression, and this eventually led to the development of a repeal movement. The first signs of success came in 1933, when the Senate passed the Blaine Act to investigate the repeal of the 18th Amendment. This was followed by an amendment to the Volstead Act called the Cullen-Harrison Act that permitted the production and sale of particular types of alcohol. A few months later, the 21st Amendment was ratified. This repeal of prohibition permitted individual states to implement their own laws regarding alcohol. This caused the black market to suffer a huge loss of profit. However, with America's alcohol brewing industry back in business, the economy received a much-needed boost. While some towns continued to impose restrictions following the official repeal, the Prohibition era was most definitely over. On paper, Prohibition looked like an excellent idea. Unfortunately, in reality, Prohibition would go down as one of the United States' worst mistakes.